Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you again for helping the channel reach yet another major milestone in crossing 50,000 subscribers. As a way of celebrating, I'm bringing you behind the scenes for the production of an episode of Undead Legacy, and this was recorded on September 10th, 2022. Now, I'm not necessarily going to break down all of the editing techniques and filming techniques that I use, such as transitions and things like that, but it's more of how the video is assembled as a whole. So it all starts with recording, and I generally like to start recording at about 7 to 9 a.m., get an early start while I'm fresh and energized. So while the episode is time-lapsing in the background, I'm gonna just talk briefly about the channel history and let you know how we got this far. Over the past 10 years, YouTube has become my go-to resource for both education and entertainment, and I always envied those who had successful channels, but I never thought that I could be successful on the platform. But then, around the end of 2020, my former boss dragged me to one of those cringy leadership conferences where there's a guy on stage and he's trying to inspire the crowd and give bits of inspiration and encouragement, and you're going to be successful and you're going to be successful. It certainly wasn't my kind of thing, but I did take away one thing, and that is, don't let your future self look back on today and regret not starting that project you've always wanted to get started on. And for me, that was getting started on a YouTube channel. And so that night, I went home, I got my notebook out, and I started just framing out everything about the channel. What videos I was going to make, channel art, channel name, intro, outro, things like that. I think that the history of the channel is best visualized with this chart showing subscriber growth per day over time. And this is the entire history of the channel spanning 1 year, 234 days. In January of 2021, I produced my first video, episode 1 of the Vanguard series. And YouTube is massively saturated with gaming channels, especially Let's Play content, so to be successful, you really have to stand out. And growth for me has been incredibly fast, and this first blip right here was my Loot Explained and His Lucky Looter Worth It video. Not my best video, that is for sure, but it was a good start, and it got me on people's feeds, which was important for what came next. Everything we know about Alpha 20 so far, which really put me on the map and started this cascade of events that led me to where I am today. This next bump here was my Alpha 20 in 10 minutes video, followed closely by the first episode of the new series, The Last Act. And I think it's always a good idea to start a new series the same time as publishing a video that you expect to be very successful, because they sort of help to cross-pollinate each other and drive the algorithm in your favor. Then it was time for the big event. Alpha 20 released, and during the Streamer Weekend event, while everyone else had fun playing and streaming, I did a stream, but I also put in a marathon recording and editing session in order to crank out this video here. And very fortunately for me and the channel, it won the favor of the Fun Pimps and was linked in their patch notes, leading to the most explosive period of growth that I've ever had. And riding that momentum, I made an updated Loot Explained video and a beginner's guide, and those 3 videos are still in my top 5 performing videos all time. Of course, things did level off during the Frostbite series, but we started perking up again a little bit during the Darkness Falls series, and things continue to go very well here through the Undead Legacy series. Okay, so now recording is complete, and I'm ready to sit down and start the editing session. It's about 12 o'clock noon. I do all of my recording and editing on one single day. I try not to stretch it into multiple days unless I absolutely have to. So this is what I refer to as first pass edit, and I'm looking to get out all of the fluff in the video, all those episodes of silence. I want to condense it all down into a tightly packed, action-packed sequence. This was originally 2 hours and 18 minutes of footage, and I'm going to be cutting this down to a total of 38 minutes and 45 seconds by the end, which is a 72% reduction, and that includes extra recording for cinematics, intro, and outro. And during this pass, I'll do a lot of the video and audio transitions and set up special segments like montages. Ryan asked, why the name Guns, Nerds, and Steel? Well, the name is derived from the title of a book by Jared Diamond called Guns, Germs, and Steel. I wanted something unique. A lot of people just use their name plus gaming, or just their name, and I wanted there to be a distinction between myself and the channel. Tamricky Gaming just doesn't have the same ring as Guns, Nerds, and Steel. And it sort of fits the theme of the channel as well, guns representing the survival action, nerds representing the deep dives, tutorials, and game news, and steel representing all of the building. The montage for this episode is marked in orange, and I make a cut in the timeline for every segment that I want to align with a music beat. Oftentimes, this process is very easy, just requiring careful cutting and then simple copy paste using some special tools that are in Premiere Pro, which is the editing software that I use. But this one will eventually require quite a bit more hands-on work due to the integration of dialogue within the sequence, so it required more like fine-tuning than normal. But we'll work on this more later during third pass editing. Okay, so we're back into the normal editing here. You can see the normal parts of the timeline are generally going to be in this light blue color. Originally, I took a lot of inspiration from other 7 Days to Die YouTubers like Glock9, Joodle, and Neebs Gaming. I basically reverse engineer other channels to try to figure out what they're doing and why, even to this day. And everything from music integration to sound effects, scene transitions to thumbnails. I didn't go to school for any of this. I'm just learning by observation and experience. So having YouTube channels out there to emulate myself after is very important for my future growth. Varmint asked, when did I decide on my cinematic style? And like I mentioned earlier, this was way before I even started making videos. I saw what Neebs Gaming was doing, and I just knew that that was the only way that I could make videos that would stand out. My plan was initially to draw the attention in of other gamers through game updates and tutorials, and then continuously post edited Let's Play videos as the staple content for the channel. So we've now reached the Horde Night part of the segment, which is colored red, and I chose to make this video during a Horde Night episode because it takes a lot of extra editing that I wanted to show off to you. Prior to the action, I log out of the game and I back up my save game file. Backing up save game files is integral for how I put together episodes, but there will be more on that a little bit later. I then play through the Horde Night from start to finish and proceed with recording the remainder of the episode. Recently, I've had another PC set up. To my left, if I just rotate over here, there's another full PC build right here. This is my old PC, but it runs 7 Days to Die just fine. So all I have to really do is just rotate from this keyboard and mouse to this keyboard and mouse, and then I'm able to control Temcam and orient him in any direction that I need to. So that allows me to get all of these really cool third-person perspectives that you've been seeing in my videos over the last several months. So again, in red, you're seeing my first-person action that was recorded in the primary footage, and then in the lavender color, you'll see all of the footage from Temcam. Now I have to carefully align this so that the timing is exactly right. That's not too difficult to do. And so whenever there's just like a lull in the action, like I'm reloading or there's some sort of, not much is going on here at the fighting position, I'm able to swivel over, reposition the camera, or say that there's something that I noticed but that I can't get a good view of from my primary position. I will then just take a moment to position Temcam so that I can showcase that and talk more about it from my first-person perspective while you're seeing it from the third-person perspective. It helps show off a lot of action that we just would otherwise have missed, and I think having only one camera perspective during Horde Night is pretty boring, right? So this is something that I think really gives my videos a unique flavor, and it's something that I will not be diverging from anytime soon. It might sound daunting to you, but I've just forced myself to do this so much now that it's practically second nature to both fight and film the Horde simultaneously. Some minor audio effects to add a volume reduction and minor echo helps maintain some of the immersion when we break away to the third-person camera view, but I'm still working on that part. And do note that the Temcam shots, these are not the cinematic shots. These are all like live action supplemental shots to the primary action. And the cinematic filming where there's like slow motion and stuff like that will come later. So at this point, regular editing continues and I leave gaps in the timeline where I need to add in cinematic footage or fancy transitions. I color the footage where there are special effects like speed ramps or accelerated footage. Sometimes I keep Temcam with me during the entire recording session to help capture even more cool third-person footage of raiding or traveling or mining. Time lapses and this third-person footage is always fun to make and helps turn otherwise boring or time-consuming material into something that's either action-packed or interesting or just, otherwise different. Okay, so at this point, the first pass editing is complete, and it took me about an hour and a half to do on this run. Not too bad. Some editors would call it quits here, but we're just getting started, okay? Let's close out of Premiere Pro and boot the game up. Before my filming session, I made backups of my save game, so now I have two backup save game files to do additional filming in. One is for what I refer to as my B-roll or my cinematic shots. The other will be for the horde night, which I call like my pre-horde save or my pre-horde shots. So here in this footage, I'm just gathering all of those shots needed for the intro segment. I generally target 4, 8, or 16 shots for a cinematic scene because it's just easier to cut it to music if it's a multiple of 4 or 2. And I'm sure there's some sort of a music theory that would help explain why. And let me know if you know why that is. But it just seems like you can cut music into increments of 2 or 4 so much more easily. And so now we've got the intro shots and we're off to film a bit of a conversation with Trader Bob. This is just to add a little bit of flavor to a role-playing exchange that I made up regarding ordering a helicopter from him. When I originally filmed this, I made a bunch of mistakes, and so recording most of this in post allows me to cover up my mistakes and make this into a more interesting scene. I typically repeat this for, however many scenes I need to make that require some third-person footage, whether it be a change of location or visiting a trader or what I call POI showcase, which is when I do a couple of shots of a building that we're about to do a raid in, usually the outside just to give you an idea of the surroundings, but also maybe some on the inside to give you a taste of what's to come. And finally, we're logging off of this save and into that pre-horde save, of which I made yet another backup in case there needs to be another filming session after this one. Sometimes it takes 2 to 3 runs through the horde to get all of the scenes that I want. So I used to record several cinematic segments per horde, but with the addition of Temcam, I feel like I really only need 2 now. One for the build up to the horde, which shows off the base and builds up the mood, and the second to display the height of the action and all the weapons and chaos in full swing. Depending on the events of the horde, there might be more or less, I suppose, and some cinematics come out better than others. It just depends some on my mood and how ambitious or creative I'm feeling. And sometimes the perfect shot just presents itself with little effort. 7 Days to Die is just the perfect game for cinematic filming, and I consider it a shame that more creators don't use the excellent tools that are provided to us. With console commands, I can change zombie AI, I can slow the time, speed the time, pause the time, change the weather, change the lighting, change the time of day, and most importantly, I can detach the camera and move the camera around at different speeds. And that's just to name a few of the things you can do with the console commands. And so once I think I have all of the shots I need, I usually take a few minutes to set up the screenshot for the thumbnail. This is no doubt the bane of my existence. Thumbnails are probably the most important part of the video, and this is not going to perform well on YouTube. Thumbnails do much better if they're bright and colorful, but sometimes I stray away from that in order to satisfy my own artistic vision of what the thumbnail should be with regard to the episode, and not necessarily what it should be with regard to satisfying the YouTube metrics or the YouTube algorithm. And so now recording is officially complete. We have the primary and secondary live rolls done. That would be my footage and Temcam's footage, and it's all edited. But now we have to cut in the B-roll footage. So now I'm cutting all of that juicy footage up into usable pieces, and I'm integrating them into the timeline where I think that they would fit best. Inevitably, some of it will not make the final cut, but we won't know that until we get to the next editing pass, which is the music pass. And so we're going back to the beginning of the timeline for my favorite part of the editing process, which is adding in the music. This is the part that really gives life to the video. Cutting scenes to the beat is super satisfying to watch, and the music just helps amplify the mood or the emotion that you're conveying in the footage. I've struggled a lot with learning how to use music. Some of my early videos are just really difficult to watch because I really overused music back then, but now I strive to use music more selectively in order to enhance the scene. For example, perky or upbeat music in the morning as we get our day started, or tense, ominous music during a prolonged fight. In order to choose music, I basically listen to licensable music in my spare time when I'm mowing the lawn or driving home from work. Or even during the editing process, I'll just be listening to music in the background. And when I listen to something that I think I could use, I'll favorite it and then I'll download it the next time I'm at my computer. I have a folder for music on my computer, which is sorted by mood. So whenever I'm in the editing process and I need a some creepy ambience music, or I need a POI showcase song, or I need some chill music or some synthwave or country. Like I know exactly what folder to go in. And then there's, I have certain favorite songs that I use frequently, but for the most part, I just have everything clumped together by mood, not necessarily by like artist or anything like that. Montages are great because it allows me to condense a long activity into a shorter time frame to maintain a mood that would otherwise have been lost along the way. Like this montage fight, there were major lulls where things would have gotten boring, but through editing, everything seems to be very tight together, and the fun of the fight was carried through until the end with some upbeat music playing to the beat of hammer strikes. Lieutenant Dan asked me what my favorite video is that I've made, and I would have to say definitely the finale for Darkness Falls, but also the finale for the Frostbite series. These episodes took multiple days of filming and editing and days of planning as well and testing. But I have to be honest with you, they both performed woefully bad in terms of metrics, performing below average for the series as a whole. So I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to handle finales in the future, but I think the time investment is probably far better spent on episode 1 than on episode 40. So that might be the transition that needs to be made, putting much more effort into the intro and the beginning of a series versus the end of it. And so while I'm cutting in the music, I'm also using this opportunity to proof watch the episode thus far. I cut a lot of things out. My philosophy is that if I listen to a scene and I don't feel like it was necessary to see this scene in order to connect the previous scene to the next scene, then that scene just has to get cut out. Some people might have enjoyed the segment when I was droning on about some mundane task, but ultimately the episode is better off without it. Jean asked, could you maybe talk about some of your military experience? Sure, I joined the Army in 2008, and after basic training, medic training, and airborne school, I was assigned to a unit in Louisiana. After a year there, I was transferred to New York and then to Afghanistan for 1 year. After a total of 5 years, I left the service to go back to school. It was among the best and worst times of my life, but I don't regret any of it. And much of who I am today and the life I'm living now, I attribute to my experience in the military. And so now we're going to get into the good stuff. The music for Horde Night. I get most of my music from 4 sources currently. I have a few bits from Motion Array and the YouTube Music Library, but most of my music is coming from Epidemic Sound and more recently from White Bat Audio. And I'll put a little link here for White Bat Audio. It's a YouTube channel that has just free music. It's really fun just to listen to, let alone to make videos with. He makes just perfect, dark, industrial, synthwave type of music that both suits 7 Days to Die and my personal taste very well. And so this segment here was just some build-up music for the pre-Horde scene. And this segment here is for the intra-Horde scene. Generally, there is more going on during this segment, and so the music is less about building tension and more about releasing it. Hade8 asked about what I did before YouTube. Well, after learning a little bit about medicine in the Army, I decided to pursue it as a career. I have a bachelor's degree in medical biology and a master's degree in physician assistant studies, and I work part-time now as a physician assistant. I have no training or past experience whatsoever in anything related to being a YouTuber. So the editing goes on, and at this point, it's more about polishing the large portions of the episode that don't require music. Music is not something that should be used to fill the silence. Having no music is preferred if there is not much going on, and for the remainder of the video, not much was going on, so I didn't do very much in the way of sound effects or music. Rubik asked a very deep question here. What is the surprise or hurdle that caused me to change the plan? Well, I'd say that I'm not really operating under a specific plan at this point. My 1-year goal was 1,000 subs, and I ended up with more than 20,000. The biggest shift in my overall plan on YouTube is to try to diverge a little bit from episodic content. One-off or mini-series content usually delivers more bang for your buck on YouTube, and so I want to pursue that more and more as time goes by. And I also want to find another staple game for the channel so that I'm not so heavily dependent on a single game for my success. I put the scene with Bob together here and covered up most of the original footage with B-roll. And that puts us right at the end of the video. I have a pre-made outro sequence, just like my pre-made intro sequence, so I just have to drag and drop it in. Once a week, I update the credits roll to include all of my supporters, and I have this final 14-minute segment of footage, which is a time lapse of me fixing the bass after my regular recording had finished. Bass repairs don't make for good footage, so it's much easier to, again, just time lapse it in somewhere. And what better way to close things out and to set up a segue into the next episode. So at this point, the episode is essentially finished, but I'm currently conducting an experiment by cutting out a segment of the episode to make into a YouTube short as a sneak preview that will be posted 24 hours before the main episode. This strategy has increased channel views, but with so many other variables at play, I'm not sure if this has had an overall positive impact on the channel. I actually accidentally deleted my template for this, so in this video here, I had to remake it again from scratch. I did on this occasion take a few more minutes to do one final proof watch, just skimming through all of the cinematic segments and adding in some additional zooming effects, and made sure all the proper transitions were in place. Zabian asked, how do you do it and keep up your drive? YouTube, and I suppose self-employment in general, has this unique way of rewarding continued effort. Every video I make increases the reach and popularity of the channel, so it's easy to stay motivated when everything is working and the channel is growing. That said, it's a lot of work, and the continuous 7 days a week grind is exhausting, and that was the primary reason for me reducing my hours at my other job. And then it's off to Photoshop to start working on the thumbnail. I use Photoshop for this, and often I have multiple screenshots that I compare to select my favorite. I think that image editing is an incredibly important skill for a YouTuber, and I'm no expert by any means, but I do try hard to experiment with new effects and learn new skills in Photoshop. Sometimes I can put the thumbnail together in 5 minutes, and other times it takes like an hour or more. Sometimes I make a thumbnail and I remake it again days later, and I've even changed thumbnails after a video has premiered. Thumbnail creation is definitely not my favorite activity, and it's really difficult to predict which ones will do well and which ones will not. Majama asked me why 7 days and what other games do I play. So currently I'm playing Madden 23 on my PS5, and I've also been playing Clash of Clans on mobile for the last 9 years. I recently finished up a playthrough in Empire Total War here on PC, and I'm probably doing a run in Crusader Kings 3 here pretty soon. Here's my most played games on Steam, and other than that, it's been almost all 7 Days to Die since Alpha 19 came out. I really love 7 Days to Die, and it's a very popular game on Steam, and it has a great YouTube following with great replayability, so it made sense to base my channel around it for all of those reasons. And so then I hop onto Patreon, and I post the thumbnail there. Select tiers of patrons get early access to thumbnails, and others get early access to the video itself. So now it's time to jump onto YouTube Studio and finish off the settings, title, thumbnail, timestamps, and the description of the video I made the day before, and I grab the link to it and I post that again back over on Patreon for early access. And all that's left to do is hit that export button and let my computer process the video. I'll then upload it to YouTube either later that night or first thing in the morning. Altogether, it took me about 5 hours and 18 minutes to edit this video, along with the 2 hours and 18 minutes of filming. That puts the final tally at roughly 7 hours and 38 minutes from start to finish, and that's really good time for me. Sometimes these Horde Night videos take upwards of 10 hours, but with experience comes efficiency, so even though I continue to add more and more to my videos, I'm able to keep the production time to a reasonable level. I release 3 episodes per week, and I film them back to back to back over 3 days. I usually feel very burnt out at the end, and I do require some time to recharge, but by the end of the week, I'm ready to roll again on the next set of videos. So anyway, my friends and fellow survivors, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for all of the support and encouragement along the way here to 50K, and cheers to the next 50K, hopefully sometime next year. But until then, I wish you all the very best. Thank you for watching and all of the support. It really means a lot to me. And goodbye. Mikasa, say hi. Say hi. Look at the camera.